Bulletcast for life.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Under the Radar. My name is Brandon, and on today's episode we have a whole bunch of news going on in the world of professional wrestling. I was debating if I should have done an episode this week or just kind of save it to have one giant episode next week, but I decided that, especially after the news that has broke over the last 24 hours, that I had to do it. There's just been so much stuff going on since the last Bulletcast that we recorded on Tuesday. And then, as soon as we stopped recording, went up on Twitter, and news was out that Tye Dillinger requested his release. He tweeted out a statement saying that before he gets out on the dirt sheets, that he wants to come out and formally say that he did ask for his release. And he was granted it today, along with two other wrestlers and a long-time agent. So first off, we have Tye Dillinger being released, as well as Hideo Itami, who we had talked about in the past, saying that he requested his release. And then, in kind of a surprising one, the one that we haven't really heard anything about, TJ Perkins has also been released. And finally, the one that kind of shocked everybody, that kind of broke over the last night, last late night, early morning, depending on who you are. Arn Anderson, a longtime producer / agent for WWE, has also been released and not with the company. No word on why Arn Anderson is released, if he wanted to be released, if he was like retiring or anything like that. We have talked about there is kind of a new influx of talent in terms of agents coming into WWE. We have Hurricane Helms, we have Abyss, I think Sanjay Dutt, or not Sanjay Dutt. There's other people that are Daivari is another one that's also kind of come in. So they're getting a lot of fresh talent coming in on the behind the scenes side. One of the reasons they've kind of done this is because once WWE moves to Fox to go to SmackDown, they're going to have a crew on Monday and a crew on Friday, and what they want to do is they don't want to have everybody. They're going to have two distinct different crews for those, just so it's easier, less travel for the guys like that. So they're kind of bringing them in early to kind of get the flow of things. So this also brings up their future. TJP, Hideo Itami, Tye Dillinger, and Arn Anderson are all, I would say, assets in their own certain way. I would say Tye Dillinger, I've never really been a huge fan of him. I know a lot of people love the 10 gimmick. It's a simple gimmick. I think he can bring it over to the indie scene or wherever else he might land. So this doesn't mean that he's going to be hindered. I mean, it doesn't mean he's going to go out there on the indie scene to do a perfect 10 gimmick. He can go out there and completely change his look and his style and whatever he wants. But that being said, everyone's going to just speculate about AEW. If they sweep these guys up? If I was AEW, I think the number one person I would go after, being honest, is probably Arn Anderson. I don't know what his physical state is, what he wants to do, if he wants to work anymore, if he wants to be in the wrestling business. Cody Rhodes did tweet out today that he put over Arn, saying that he's learned so much from him and he's copied his mannerisms and catchphrases. So it seems as though there obviously is a relationship with Cody and Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson going all the way back with WCW with Dusty Rhodes. He's probably known Cody since he was maybe even before Cody was born. He knew about Cody. But Arn Anderson, one of the most brilliant, I don't know if I say one of the most brilliant minds in the business, but an influential guy. He's been with WWE, WCW. He's been in major wrestling companies for, 30 years at least, more than 30 years. So, and he's been employed basically that entire time. So now that he's a free agent or not with the company anymore, it's going to be, AEW, all they have right now in terms of backstage producers or agents, I think Billy Gunn is kind of the only one they've really formally introduced. So if you get Billy Gunn, Billy Gunn he's Billy Gunn. I'm not super high on his wrestling mind. He's been in WWE at the Performance Center before, so he's done some sort of work like that. But I think if you can get Arn Anderson on the AEW roster to be a backstage hand, help him out with producing, agent, whatever you think his best role would be. I think that's definitely a way to go. Now, Ty Dillinger, on the other hand, if I was AEW, I would not sign him right away. I would have him go out there on the indie scene, maybe prove himself in a way, because I just haven't seen anything personally that really like screams out he's so underutilized and he needs to be pushed at a higher level and needs to have creative freedom. He's kind of like a Damien Sandow, I would say. Like, Damien Sandow got super over doing his Mizdow gimmick. Ty Dillinger, to an extent, got over. Maybe not to the same degree as I would say Damien Sandow did when he was doing the Mizdow stuff. But he was really just a character wrestler. He had a gimmick, but then once it gets down into the ring, it just didn't really translate. He didn't really get that big of a push. I mean, he came into SmackDown, he got a little bit of a push. He got injured, but before he got injured, he wasn't exactly doing all that much. So if I was AEW, I would hold off on Ty. Maybe you bring him in as a surprise on the over-budget Battle Royal if you want. But I just don't know how everything structured in that company works. I mean, obviously, maybe not everyone who's on Double or Nothing is going to be with AEW once they get a TV show coming up, but it's a strong possibility that mostly everybody will be signed to some sort of contract with AEW. So Ty Dillinger, I would hold off on him. I don't exactly know what he would do. I mean, Damien Sandow, as I said, he goes to TNA, he does a Liberace gimmick, just completely flops. And I'll be honest, I don't even know what he's doing right now. If he's even wrestling, if he's doing acting, or God knows what Aaron Rex is doing on the indie scene. Now, when it comes to Hideo Itami, he would be, out of the three wrestlers, would be the guy I would want to scoop up personally. He is kind of I don't know if I say run down or broken down. He's had a lot of injuries during his WWE career, so that kind of gets you a little bit weary. If you try to push him, does he go down with another injury? He's been doing good work over there on 205 Live, and then he's Japanese. He made his name over in Japan. So does he want to go to Japan and just live there, be with, I don't exactly know what his family life is, but have a family and just like live over there in Japan? Just live his life the way he was before WWE, or does he want to? I mean, AEW, the good thing with them is they have a lighter schedule, it seems. Maybe if they do a TV show, I mean, I think if they're doing a TV show, it's going to be live, because that's just how much money that companies or television stations are throwing at WWE and other sports entities to have live programming that you need to watch. Now, does that mean it has to be live, or can I do some sort of taping system? But then when you get into taping, that's when you get into spoilers, and it seems as though wrestling gets spoiled a lot more than sitcoms or whatever. I don't exactly know how I mean, obviously the people probably sign like NDAs or whatever who are at those tapings. But anyways, if I was Hideo Itami, I mean, he's probably could get good money. If I'm AEW, I'd go out and try to get him. I think it all comes down to personal reasons and what he wants to do with his life post WWE. Now, TJ Perkins, he has a history with Impact. He could go back to Impact. AEW might want to scoop him up before he signs with Impact. Who exactly knows? I mean, I don't exactly know his relationship with those guys, with Cody, the Bucks, Kenny, Chris Jericho, any of those guys. I mean, TJP, I think he kind of was on the WWE roster kind of when Chris Jericho was on his way out, but that doesn't mean they really had any sort of relationship. TJ Perkins, he's done the indie circuit, so he probably knows the Bucks to some extent. But I think TJ Perkins, if you want to scoop him up to go to AEW, I think he's a good signing. He was over as kind of the first babyface lead of 205 Live, so I mean he got over in the at the Cruiserweight Classic. So I mean, a lot of talent being released here. If I would put a list, if I was AEW, I'd first try to get Arn Anderson, then Hideo, then TJ Perkins, and then Ty Dillinger. No knock on Ty Dillinger, I just don't know what he can do. And I think you can get better talent for Ty Dillinger for less, or not having the WWE stink on him, you might say. AEW, I don't think they should go the WCW route and just sign every single wrestler that leaves WWE. They should have some sort of a prestige that goes with WWE. You don't want to turn into TNA in the mid to late 2000s where just everybody on earth who gets cut from WWE is signing with them, and then it just seems like it's WWE light, and That's not what you want. AEW wants to be its own promotion. They don't want to piggyback off of WWE, and I don't think they're going to. If I were to pick, as I said, I don't know what Arn Anderson's situation is. I definitely think you'll see Arn Anderson in AEW in some form or capacity, if he's perfectly healthy, if he actually wants to work still. I think Arn Anderson definitely will be in in AEW rather. So next up, we have some more big news. We have wrestlers being released, and now we have a wrestler returning. So Roman Reigns, it was announced on Vince McMahon's Twitter that Roman Reigns will be returning to Raw next week to give an update on his battle with leukemia. This is the first time he's appeared in WWE since late October, last October. So I have mixed feelings about this. Yes, it is good to see Roman Reigns. He's been doing the Hobbs and Shaw movie with The Rock. He's also doing some sort of Nickelodeon TV show or an appearance with them. But I do think it's kind of a bad look for WWE to kind of exploit Roman Reigns' leukemia battle to try to pop a rating. I think what you can do is he's also going to go on Good Morning America on Tuesday, so that doesn't mean anything good or bad. This is also why I think it's kind of a bad move on WWE's part, is you announce this on Thursday, and you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and most of Monday, so 3.5 days, or 4 days, because they announced it on Thursday. So basically 4 whole days for people to think and ponder and maybe think the worst and also think the best of what Roman Reigns' situation is. Now, what you could do and what normal sports or any other company would do if there's a high-level person in their company who's battling some sort of severe injury or illness is you would put out updates as soon as possible. I mean, when Ryan Shazier went down with that terrible spine or neck injury with the Steelers, basically every single time that they had some sort of positive news, they would just release it, and then they would have he came out to do the coin toss or be an honorary captain a few months later or sometime during the season. So I think what WWE should do, the classy way to do it, as in the hashtag that Vince used for Roman Reigns, is you put that announcement out there. You say, his leukemia is in remission, or unfortunately Roman Reigns' battle is, I don't know how you would word it, but he has to retire. So I think just giving the announcement of what the actual news is, you put that in the statement so everybody knows what's going on. You don't have people worrying, and you don't use someone's real life situation as a ratings ploy. I think what they've been doing thus far for Roman Reigns, it's been on the higher end of what I would expect from WWE. Yes, we kind of talked a little bit about once he actually did announce his sickness, and they had the heel turn, and Roman and Dean Ambrose said something about how Roman got what he deserved, or whatever the exact wording was. That was kind of the low point. That's kind of the worst it was, and they didn't really exploit Roman that much since then. It also kind of goes with Dean Ambrose leaving the company and not getting that much of a push in the last few months. But with Roman Reigns, obviously I hope he comes back and he announces that he's healthy or he's almost done fighting and he's going to be back. I don't even care if he's back in the ring. Obviously, as a human being, we just want him to come out and just announce that he's healthy. If he's healthy and that means, but something's happened to where he can never wrestle again, so be it. But I just think WWE, not the best look of them to use a guy, real life situation, life or death situation, to improve their ratings. So something that improved WWE's ratings this week was the influx of 4 NXT acts. If you haven't listened to my ranting and ravings over on the Bulletcast, I suggest you go do so after you finish this podcast. I was not a fan of all 4 of those guys being introduced into WWE with no reason, especially the Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano situation. They have done such a good job. 2 years of just fantastic storyline, one of the best storylines and feuds I've been personally like involved in watching, like just emotionally invested to see what happens. And then the big crescendo, you would think, is DIY finally getting back together in some form or capacity, maybe, begrudgingly or full-fledged, they love each other and the band's getting back together. But no, they just throw them out on WWE, Raw, and SmackDown, and now they're just buddy-buddy for the most part. And Tommaso Ciampa, who is like the ultimate lone wolf, is now Raw NXT, which makes absolutely no sense. And now it kind of has come out in recent days why it makes no sense, because it seems as though Vince McMahon kind of made this announcement on a whim, this decision on a whim rather, and was like, okay, I need some people, I need the best NXT guys to come up, so give me the 4 best guys. There's also rumors that maybe Triple H didn't know about this call up until the last second, and he was not a big fan of this, because as I've said on the Bulletcast, when they had that influx of NXT talent post whatever new era or whatever they were calling it when all the McMahons came out, it seems as though it was Triple H giving up assets. Like he franchise tagged Ciampa, Ricochet, DIY, or Aleister Black, Undisputed Era. He franchise tagged those guys, and he let Vince take the people who he likes. I mean, I think Heavy Machinery was doing good stuff in NXT, but he knows that Vince would like them maybe on a surface level, but yet they're not the talent that the other people are that he has in NXT. But I think now Vince has kind of realized that, okay, maybe these aren't the best people down in NXT, because Vince allegedly does not watch NXT. So now he wants the real top people in NXT, and now it seems maybe it's just going to be a one-off thing, or maybe like a 2-week thing. Maybe it's kind of that he introduces these guys from NXT to the main roster. They don't come back until Superstar Shakeup. Then they get drafted to either Raw or SmackDown, so the main roster audience has some sort of familiarity with them. As we saw on Raw, they went to Lafayette, maybe for the last time for a TV taping, and for the most part, the NXT guys got little to no reaction. I think most of them, I mean, maybe Aleister Black didn't win him over because he was in more of a squash match, but Ricochet, I think DIY had a good enough match to where they sort of woke up the crowd a little bit. I mean, the crowd was pretty much dead for the entire show, but they did kind of win over the crowd, and I think a lot of people I mean, I know it's crazy for people who are kind of in this hardcore wrestling bubble, but most people who watch WWE on a weekly basis probably don't watch NXT, don't know a lot about NXT, or maybe know anything at all, and they don't know anything about AEW, and all these things that we kind of take for granted when we're in this hardcore wrestling bubble. Once we step outside of it and we realize that there's a much larger, it is shrinking though, because ratings have been going down pretty consistently ever since Roman Reigns has, I mean, not only when Roman Reigns announced that he has leukemia, but also since they've added another hour to Raw. It's been just consistently going down and down since then. But the whole NXT situation just flabbergasts me on how Vince McMahon just kind of on a whim says, bring up these 4 guys. I don't care what's going on down there. Because I've been doing a shitty job. Bring these guys up so we can do something. And it worked. I mean, ratings did go up. It's a whole amalgamation of different things going on, with it being the week after, the show after Elimination Chamber. You had the NXT guys call up, Becky Lynch being what she is, not exactly the ratings draw, and then, I mean, the first hour to the third hour drop off, I think, was like the most it's been in like a year or something like that, but the first hour was so big that it kind of led to a much bigger drop off than normal, just because you're at a higher high, and when you go to the average, or whatever the exact number was, obviously it's going to be a bigger drop off than what it normally is. So let's get into NXT. So we got the last 2 weeks of NXT TV since I did the last Under the Radar show. So this one was from February 13th. So we have Ricochet and Adam Cole in the main event. So let's just start off with Dominik Dijakovic, going up against Shane Thor. I think I got that right. It's Djokovic. Dominic Dijakovic. I'm telling you, I'm going to get it right eventually. And he wins in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Kind of a longer squash match, but definitely a squash match in this sense. I think Dijakovic looked great. He kind of got a little bit more, was able to do more of his kind of indie style. He did like a corkscrew. He did like some sort of like move off the middle rope or top rope onto the floor. So he's definitely kind of showing off more of his ability, his athletic ability in these matches. It's not just strength, he's also showing off some of the things he can do. So I thought that was a good kind of, next step up for Dijakovic. And later on down the line, maybe post-WrestleMania, he gets kind of his first real feud, or maybe even after, or maybe during the set of TV tapings, because they just did a taping on Wednesday, I believe. And now it seems as though they're kind of, shuffling some things up, and I don't know exactly what happened, but apparently there maybe going to be some things to kind of explain what's gone on this past week. So, next up, they go to the Undisputed Era in a warehouse container, and they're just cutting a promo, and Roderick Strong kind of talks about how it's nice how Bobby Fish is back, so now they're reforming Red Dragon, so now that leaves him the opportunity to go after singles gold. And they're going to be forever undisputed. So then Io Shirai and Kairi Sane were interviewed backstage, talking about how they felt after beating Shayna Baszler in that tag team match. Shirai talked about coming after the NXT Women's Championship, which makes a whole lot of sense. Bianca Belair interrupted and told Shirai and Sane to back off because she's going to be going after the NXT Women's Championship, and then she said she's undefeated because it's a mindset or whatever. So we have Humberto Carrillo and Stacy Irvin Jr. already in the ring, and then we have Cassius Ohno interrupting some sort of tag team match. He walks out on a promo, and he cuts a promo, and he basically just runs down the entire NXT Full Sail crowd. I liked it. This was definitely a babyface promo for me, even though it was a heel promo in general, because the Full Sail crowd kind of gets on my nerves a little bit, but regardless, the delivery from Ohno was fine, and then out of nowhere, Keith Lee comes out, knocks him out, and he stands over Ohno's lifeless body. He took the mic and he said, "Oh no," in a real sly way, and then he did the "Oh my God." Oh, I completely botched that, but you know what I'm saying. The "Oh my God" singing. Just completely forget about what I just said there. So then he kind of cuts a little bit of promo on Ohno, talking about when they had their match a few weeks ago. He kicked him in the balls, and so this is Keith Lee getting some retribution. And while Ohno was still laying out on the floor, the Street Profits make their entrance. They kind of walk over to Ohno, and Montez Ford kind of just lays on the ground convulsing, just kind of making fun of Ohno. I thought that was a fun little interaction between those guys there. So then we have the Street Profits of Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins going up against Humberto Carrillo and Stacy Irvin Jr. I thought this was a good tag team match. The story of this was really the Street Profits after losing to the Forgotten Sons a few weeks ago. Kind of showing off more of an intense side of them. Not exact. I mean, they showed maybe heelish. I wouldn't say heelish tendencies, but a much more vicious side to them. This kind of started when Carrillo kind of put a hand out to shake Ford's hand. Ford shook it, but then after kind of holding on to a bit, he hit him with a punch or a cheap shot, whatever you would call it. So this definitely was kind of furthering the Street Profits' evolution of kind of character development. They lost against the Forgotten Sons, and now they kind of realize that they can still have fun when they make the ring entrance, but when it gets to in the ring, they got to get serious, and they got to just do everything they can. So after they beat the Street Profits, end up winning. I thought this was a good match. Not exactly the best in the world, but afterwards, Dawkins and Ford took the mics, and they talk about how they want a piece of the action for the gold, and for some reason the crowd chanted "You deserve it," which is one of the reasons why I'm not the biggest fan of the Full Sail crowd. But they talked about that their road on NXT has been a roller coaster, and they said that they are ready to go to war anytime. I get it, because the War Raiders are the NXT Tag Team Champions. They were about to call it the War Raiders, but they're uninterrupted by the Tag Team European Union of Marcel Barthel and Fabian Eichner. And they kind of go back and forth a little bit, and they get into a brawl, and then that leads to Oni Lorcan and Danny Burch to do a run-in. And the War Raiders come out, and then the Undisputed Era comes out. Just a trio, no Adam Cole, of Riley, Fish, and Strong. So the Undisputed Era kind of grounded the War Raiders for a little bit, but then the War Raiders were able to turn the tide, and they stood tall as they head into the commercial break. So next up, they have a Johnny Gargano video package hyping up the match between Johnny Gargano and Velveteen Dream the next week, which is this week's, which we will talk about once this one is done. And then we have Taynara Conti going up against Aaliyah. Aaliyah, she's been on TV multiple times in different gimmicks. She's kind of stuck with this whole Versace privilege gimmick. And Taynara Conti, she has been on the Mae Young Classic a few times. I think she has been on NXT television as well in different capacities. And Aaliyah gets the win here in 2 minutes 51 seconds. Vanessa Bourne was at ringside, and she was just kind of there scouting, no real reason, but then Conti went up to the top rope. Vanessa gets involved, grabbing on her leg, and then Aaliyah gets her with a tap-out submission. So, I mean, the match was rough. It wasn't exactly the best. It was only a 2-minute or sub-3-minute match, so not exactly the best work here. I mean, both women, they're attractive. Conti has the judo background, but that hasn't really translated to in-ring as well as Ronda Rousey has, but Ronda Rousey is one of the greatest women's fighters we've ever seen, so holding Conti up to that level isn't fair. Aaliyah, as I said, she's been with the company for a while in the Performance Center, and she still, I mean, she has a good look. She not exactly the best wrestler, so I don't know how much longer you hold on to these women until you cut them loose, because there's so much other women talent out there that could be better than this. But this was not really about them. The Vanessa Bourne held up the hand of Aaliyah after the match, and then Shayna Baszler marched out to the ring with Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke by her side, and they blindsided Bourne and Aaliyah, and then they also are fighting off. They are also beating up Conti as well, and Baszler hit Conti with a gut-wrench suplex, while her goons were taking care of the other two. And then Baszler took the mic and told the women's division not to mess with Cross or piss off Baszler, Shafir, and Duke. So the match itself was alright. The ending was definitely what the whole premise of this match was for, was just to put over Shayna Baszler after the loss, kind of keeping her strong. And off to the... they have a video package of Velveteen Dream, kind of similar to what they did with Johnny Gargano, focusing on his next matchup with Gargano for the North American Championship. So, in the main event, we had Ricochet going up against Adam Cole, and Ricochet defeats Adam Cole in 14 minutes and 21 seconds. A really good match, and not the height of what these guys can do. Maybe not as good as their takeover match, but definitely a good NXT TV main event. You knew they were going to go in for the long haul. Cole was working over Ricochet's leg for a majority of the match, which makes sense. And then Ricochet kind of powers and kind of fights through it at the very end. I mean, I thought Ricochet was doing a great job selling it. Just kind of, selling, hopping on the leg, barely putting pressure on it. Then when he did, he kind of collapses. But then Ricochet kind of hulked up at the end and kind of gutted through it, hit some power moves, hit in a Michinoku driver for the win. So, good on Ricochet, and as soon as the bell sounded for the end of the match, the Undisputed Era ran out, and they put the boots to Ricochet. Aleister Black comes out to make the save, but unfortunately the numbers advantage was too strong, 3 or 4 on 2, and Undisputed Era stood tall to close the show, so Adam Cole loses again, but they stand tall. This is what happens in NXT. I mean, I like it how they have, straight up finishes, not a whole lot of gimmick finishes for the most part. I mean, you had the Vanessa Bourne stuff, but a lot of just straight up finishes on NXT. And Adam Cole, eventually they're going to have to kind of protect him a little bit if they want to move him up the ranks. So, a lot of wrestling on this show. In total, 4 matches took up a majority of the the show. Not a whole lot of promos. They have post-match promos, and the only inset promo they really had was the Io Shirai and Kairi Sane promo. So, overall good NXT show, and next up we have this week's episode of NXT. So this is the first show post the four-way call-up, or I don't know if you can say call-up, but the debuts of the 4 NXT talent. So Aleister Black goes up against Roderick Strong to start off this show, and Aleister Black wins in 8 minutes and 28 seconds. So Aleister Black gets the win, and kind of maybe a surprise to some with Aleister Black being up on the main roster, but this also kind of plays into the fact that this was not really planned on the NXT part. So with Aleister Black winning, maybe they were going to keep him strong and maybe doing something later down the line. But Roderick Strong did get a lot of the offense in. He was working over Black, and kind of the premise of it was Aleister Black just kind of hit a Hail Mary Black Mass out of nowhere for the sudden win. So it's not like Aleister Black just went over super strong. Roderick Strong, I see what he did there. Roderick Strong just kind of was putting the boots to him. He was winning for most of the match, but just one kind of slip up and he just left a door open for Aleister Black, and he ends up getting the win. So post-match, the Undisputed Era get on to Black. Kyle O'Reilly ate a Black Mass from Black very early on. I thought O'Reilly sold it great. He just kind of hit the deck and roll and just, face planting and roll out the ring. Adam Cole and Bobby Fish went to go overwhelm Black, but Ricochet went to make the save to keep off the Undisputed Era. So they go to some backstage interview, doesn't exactly specified what, with Serena Deeb. And they go backstage, and Shayna Baszler, Marina Shafir, and Jessamine Duke are kind of storming around the women's locker room, and they're going to start a fight. Mia Yim and Xia Li Mia Yim was kind of the lead in the locker room with a lot of the kind of Mae Young Classic, younger, more unrecognized women in the locker room. So they advertise Mia Yim going up against Xia Li. They do a video package on Bianca Belair. I thought it was good, just kind of keeping her strong after her loss, and she said that her mindset is undefeated, and she's annoyed with Io Shirai and Kairi Sane. So as we kind of talked about a few weeks ago after the 6-woman tag match, that, Bianca Belair was on the babyface team. They ended up winning, but she still kind of showed heel tendencies there. And they flash back to Raw and SmackDown, and they address the debuts or the call-ups of the 4 talent. Not a whole lot to it. They just kind of said, they appeared and they just kind of said what they did. So not gonna read a whole lot into this. And they announced in 2 weeks the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic will start, and they said whoever wins will face the War Raiders for the NXT Championships at TakeOver New York. And they announced 4 of the teams that would be in it: the Undisputed Era, Street Profits, Forgotten Sons, and European Union are in. And then next week we're going to find out the other teams. I have seen the entire bracket. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but if you want to see the bracket, it is out there. This Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic is stacked. So next up we have Mia Yim going up against Xia Li, and Mia Yim wins in 3 minutes and 52 seconds. It was a good match, not a whole lot to it. Mia Yim, I think she's really good. I think they kind of set up a little bit with Shayna Baszler and Mia Yim, so I think maybe after Io Shirai, if Baszler fights her off, Mia Yim I think is definitely one of those veteran wrestlers who can stay down in NXT and, teach a lot of the women on the roster. Kind of like what Eric Young was a few years ago on the men's side. Just kind of a veteran hand, good in the ring. I think Mia Yim maybe has more upside and maybe more star power than Eric Young does. But I think for her role right now, I think it's good. So post-match, Baszler, Shafir, and Duke attack Yim. Basically the exact same thing that happened at the end of the Roderick Strong match. But anyways, so we have 3 wrestlers, unnamed wrestlers, but they were kind of the early participants, kind of the first round losers of the Mae Young Classic. They kind of come out to try to make the save, but they didn't. So then Duke and Shafir hold them back, and then Baszler hits a running knee on Yim, so now they stand tall once again. I was thinking that they were going to have kind of the jobbers, the lower card women come out. They get stopped. But then I thought Shirai, Insane were going to come out to make the save. They didn't. I'm not going to complain too much about it. They actually had some women or some people come out and make a save for a babyface, which rarely happens in WWE. So backstage they go to Gargano warming up with the band. Candice LeRae kind of comes out and gives him a pep talk. And then out of nowhere, Tommaso Ciampa comes out and says that he is willing to help Gargano if he wants it. And Gargano said that he doesn't need Ciampa's help. He did everything on his own. And he, kind of looks at LeRae, and then Ciampa was like, okay, he walks off. So this is kind of what I was talking about what's going on with Raw and SmackDown is after they just tag teamed and they were just buddy-buddy, showing no real signs of dissension, now you come over on the NXT world, and they're still playing up that there's some sort of dissension, a little bit of distrust there. Ciampa kind of trying to lure Gargano into the dark side, but Gargano doesn't want to do it because he wants to do everything on his own because he's Johnny Wrestling, he's a good guy. And so then when you see this on Raw and SmackDown, which is they show the video package of what they did, it just kind of defeats the purpose and it just hurts of what NXT has been building up. I don't blame NXT for this. I blame Vince just because obviously they had 48 hours, I would say, to fix this, but there's not really a whole bunch you can fix. This has been in the can for a few weeks now, but after this episode, I believe the new set of TV tapings will kick in, so then on that episode, we're going to see maybe the reshuffling of what's going on with the whole DIY situation. So next up, we have an interview with Matt Riddle, the debuting Jeremy Borash. I think this is the first time we've seen Jeremy Borash in NXT or WWE. So that was fun to see. Just kind of simple stuff. Matt Riddle kind of saying that it was he's happy to kind of get rid of Cassius Ohno, and now he's looking past him, and he's trying to go on to win the either NXT Championship or the NXT North American Championship. Any gold is fine with him. And it was kind of a short interview, only a couple minutes long, but there's a full-length interview over on YouTube. I have not seen it yet, but I assume it's good and very sports-like feel, just the way I like it. They advertised that next week, Shayna Baszler and Mia Yim will go face-to-face. I believe this is non-title. They did not talk about that. And the main event, we have Velveteen Dream going up against the North American champion, Johnny Gargano, with Candice LeRae for the North American Championship. And we had Tommaso Ciampa kind of lurking. It wasn't exactly clear where he was, but he kind of was a lot of Sting vibes here. He was just like kind of looking up in the rafters, or he was looking at a monitor or something. It wasn't clear where he was, but I love the shot of how like Ciampa is in focus, and it looks as though he's in the rafters looking down, and the match, the ring, is out of focus. So I just love the way they shot that, and how Gargano was just kind of looking over. Ciampa was looking over Gargano, just kind of, just seeing maybe he saw an opportunity, he would take it, or just kind of looking after his little brother. And unfortunately, the little brother did not get the job done. Velveteen Dream won in 21 minutes and 51 seconds. This match was absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, I did get it spoiled for me. I did not watch this live. I went on Instagram and I saw the picture of Velveteen Dream holding the championship, but it was still a fantastic match. It got the crowd. Started off a little bit slow, but with a 20-minute match on NXT, the match started off and you can see there's like 20 minutes left, so you knew they were going to go long, and they definitely did here. I think I said a few weeks ago or last week that I didn't hear any spoilers about a championship change. I'm going to have to walk that back. I do remember after the tapings happened, there was news coming out of it that they did some sort of shenanigans to where they kind of did one finish to where Velveteen Dream won, and then they did another finish where Johnny Gargano won. So it wasn't exactly clear which finish they were going with. And now that we see, Velveteen Dream did win the championship. So now, if DIY does come out to Raw and SmackDown next week, Gargano will not have the championship. But the way Dream won is he kind of hit a multitude of Dream Valley drivers, and then he hit a Purple Rainmaker for the victory. Solid action all the way through. Possibly, I would say, takeover worthy. I thought this was a very, very good match. Better than the Adam Cole Ricochet match of the week before. But they go back after the victory to Ciampa up in the rafters, and he just kind of walks away, maybe with a little grin on his face, kind of knowing that if Gargano asked for his help, he would still be champion. So we're going to have to see where that goes from here. So overall, the first half of it was a little bit weak, kind of slow paced, but you knew once that Gargano Dream match was going to happen, it was going to pick up, and oh boy, it did. So still have my issues with the whole 4-man call-up or debuting of the NXT guys this week, but I think this show on NXT was fantastic. It was kind of awkward, that whole backstage segment with Gargano and Ciampa, just knowing about everything that happened. So, it is what it is, but I have full faith in NXT that they will figure things out. And no Total Bellas this week, because we've gone long enough. I believe I'm going to do another show on Tuesday, maybe with some more fallout of some wrestling news, and maybe we see if any of these guys link up with AEW by that point of the 4 talents that have been released. And then next week on Tuesday, I will do the Total Bellas recap. 2 episodes of Total Bellas next week. We got 2 NXT episodes this week, 2 Total Bellas next week. So thank you all very much for listening to this long episode of Under the Radar. The NXT recaps really blew the show up. So until next time, make sure to listen to the Bulletcast episode this week. I believe next week we will be back to our regularly scheduled Thursdays. I think Philip is done with his wrestling schedule. Maybe we're going to go back to Fridays when we used to do that. But thank you all very much for listening. And until next time, goodbye and good night. Bang.